All right, let's get started. So, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in, hopping on here. Appreciate you guys joining our IG Live conversation, extending what I talked about last week by myself on the impacts of COVID-19 and how they're going to affect the overseas market as well as the G League market. Like I said, I got the hardest working guy here with me in the industry, or at least one of, Kevin Tarca of Creation Talent Agency. Just a quick background on Kev. Me and Kev met probably 2 or 3 years ago at a pro combine camp. And just as a disclaimer, this isn't a promotion. This isn't a gimmick. We don't make any commission off each other. I don't send guys his way. This is pure and strictly out of respect for what each of us do and bring to the table as entrepreneurs. So whatever you have to ask Kev, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer for you in the private discussion or DMs, just like I do here. When you guys ask me questions, it's all love. There's never any hidden agenda. So I want to get it out there first and foremost. We do not partner. We do not collab. I don't get commissions off anything, nothing like that. But I want to get started with this. Kev, real quick. Every circle that your name comes up in, there's nothing but great things said about you. How do you keep up that great first impression? How do you keep up that feedback and reputation of what people say about you?
I appreciate that, man. And just real quickly, I know most of the people following here are because of you, but if there's anyone that trickled in because I'm going live, this is a bad man right here. He's a former pro himself, and he helps players transition from college to pro, and is one of the most genuine dudes that does it. I think that's why we connect so well, is because we're both very entrepreneurial. But if you don't follow him, follow him already. But I appreciate the question, man. I mean, I think. Early on, I just kind of believed in myself, and I found that the most success in the long term is really going to be defined by being genuine. So that's what I try and be. I just try and be genuine in every aspect of life, and every person I meet, every relationship I meet, because if you're genuine, that helps you build those true relationships, right? And
Right.
that's just kind of how I've operated. It seems to be working. Obviously, I think it's more of a long term thing, and it doesn't mean that some of those relationships are going to form anything, whether it's with a player, a coach, or an agent, right away. But I think just to answer your question, I mean, I appreciate it. I just believe in myself, work hard, and try and be everyone that I am, and no one that I'm not.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. All love. We appreciate that authenticity. All right, let's jump into it, man. Last time I did a timer for 30 minutes. Today, since we're coming from a different perspective, adding some insight, we're going to go 15 minutes longer just so we can hopefully try to get everybody's questions. So just so all you guys see, I'm about to set the time. You got 45 minutes, and let's hop into the content, man. So just general purposes, what have you heard from your end, from your contacts? I know we spoke last week, but what are you hearing about the overseas market as it currently stands?
So it's a loaded question, because I think there's so much uncertainty that I'm hearing so many different things, right?
Right.
You have various ends of the spectrum, which I think I'll get into. I think it's honestly almost more important for people to understand kind of how the overseas market works first, really, almost to comprehend what's happening now, right? So, you just to take one step back, you have that infamous Rudy Gobert night, right? And once that happened, it was an immediate and major impact on the market. So in regards to overseas, I think, three things happened kind of right away. That was that teams lost ticket revenue, right? Or at least the future ticket revenue. Some even had to give back revenue because people bought season tickets in advance.
Right.
Teams lost broadcasting revenues.
Yeah.
And then local sponsors got hit from the economy, right? So as a byproduct, everyone freaked out, right? Some teams booked flights home for their players. Some players booked flights home for themselves. Some teams stayed strong with the contracts. Some kind of cut them short, and everything in between, right? But again, the reason why I say that is because it's important to understand the business model before reacting, right? Yeah. So it's super important to be, I guess, empathetic and reasonable when hearing, okay, what's happening now? What's happening in the future? Like, did you sign a contract? Is it guaranteed? Yeah. Do they owe you money? Yeah. But has this ever happened in the history of ever? No. Right? They had bills to pay too. So you kind of have to be professional and communicate that and understand both sides of it. to act accordingly. So in regards to current status and what status is and what I've been hearing, I mean, I think again, a lot of it trickles down from the NBA, and the NBA set the tone, right? So, once the NBA stopped, everyone kind of froze. Then you obviously have certain markets that, for whatever reason, kept playing. But for the most part, most markets froze. Right now, NBA said that starting this week, they can have access to the practice facilities. I think that's kind of getting people too excited. That doesn't mean that the season's starting. I think overseas, specifically in terms of like the EuroLeague in Germany and Spain, which we'll get into, they're hoping to finish the season. So you have that end of the spectrum, which I think is, I mean, look, I would love nothing more for that, but I don't know if it's realistic. Then you have places like Belgium and Switzerland that seem to be kind of operating, not like nothing's happened, but, similarly to the way that they would, reaching out, trying to figure out the rosters, even signing a couple guys, right? Then you have spots like Australia who, already ended the season and they've already determined the budget cuts for next year. You have places like Poland. I've actually heard that Poland might even try and start next season earlier in this summer, which is a hot take for sure, but an interesting take. So you can kind of tell that like there's so many different angles and every country is acting differently that it's really hard to, take away like, okay, well, what's happening with overseas? Well, with what's happening with overseas is what's happening in each specific market, and they're all intertwined when you start talking about the international competition. So that's a whole nother conversation, right? So it's just, I think anything that you're hearing right now, you definitely have to take with a grain of salt. And the reality is that it's going to be affected, but the question is who's going to be affected, by how much, and when, the impact of that timeline.
So let's go on to that next point. And if you weren't here with me last week, and I forgot to preface this, if you could save your questions towards the end for the Q&A segment, so we don't feel the obligation or pressure to answer questions. But you touched on Germany and Spain. I heard Germany's trying to go into full effect. In Munich, I think possibly, or Frankfurt, maybe Berlin, obviously a bigger city, having all the teams in one hotel, doing a round robin type of finish of the season, and then doing a normal playoff structure, obviously without fans. And then Spain is pretty much piggybacking off that idea as well. So what are your thoughts on Germany and Spain trying to restart? I know one of my guys, Shaq Hines, is on here, who played, I think, in Frankfurt this year, and he's getting ready. He said he's getting ready to go back in a couple of weeks, possibly. I think the decision from the government comes today. So.
Yeah, so a couple things. They actually did. They made an announcement today that they selected Munich.
Okay.
So for that place that they're going to finish the season. Look, I obviously I have mixed thoughts. Cam, I have a guy Cam that's at Bamberg, and obviously preparing him for the potential of continuing the season. I think my job as an agent is to kind of communicate that and prepare guys, but I also have to protect my guys. So you can tell where the mixed feelings come. I think. If I'm being honest, of course, like I mentioned, I want to make it very clear. I would love nothing more for then leagues to start back up, for players to be safe, healthy, and get paid, and people have something to watch.
Right.
But if I'm being honest, I don't know if it's going to happen. I think for a couple of reasons. I think if I'm the leagues, until I'm forced to shut down, I would probably want to stay positive as well and think outside the box and try and find ways to continue. Right.
Yeah.
And stay positive. That's the main reason. But the other reason is, not to mention any of their relationships with their sponsors. Like, I would want to keep those up, because if they say, hey, we're done now, then not only does that ruin the communication and that relationship with their sponsors and the broadcast partners, but it immediately kind of ends all that money, right? That sponsorship money that might be even saving some of their season. So again, who am I? But I don't see it happening. I would love for it to happen. And, I think as a player, you have to prepare for it to happen. Those conversations have been had. My take is, look, if you're a player and you're comfortable and you're safe and you feel like going back over there and everything's, working out, and they have to, they say, hey, look, we've got X, Y, and Z procedures in place, and we're going to, take your temperature at the hotel when you get out of bed and when you come back in and all that stuff. Great. I'm all for it. And then nothing against it if you want to do that. But I have my reservations and my mindset of like protecting obviously players. So my personal gut feeling is that I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's tricky,
Same with
man.
Spain. Same with Spain. Really, the reasons I listed, but I think Germany is a little bit, ahead of them with that announcement, like this week and today.
Yeah,
But Spain said that they want to be playing by mid June as well.
yeah,
I would love nothing more.
yeah.
I
It's
don't
a
know if
tricky
it's realistic.
situation. I feel like you have to consider everybody involved, the announcers,
Of
the
course,
refs. I mean, everybody at the scores table, and you got to consider the ages of these people as well. So it's tricky territory. I think in a perfect world, yes, everybody wants sports to come back, and I think people would love to see it, watch it, and hopefully have momentum going towards other countries opening up and other sports leagues opening up. But I think it's just one of those things, like you said, they got to watch play out, and hopefully safety comes first because there is no life without being able to breathe and being able to take care of yourself. Sport is secondary to life, so you can't have one without the other.
definitely. Yeah, and sorry if I cut you off. You
No,
want
you
to
good.
continue that thought? Yeah, I mean, I think, look, in theory, it's a great idea. The NBA is talking about it. You
Right.
see these reports of finishing the season in Vegas or at Disney World. I mean, that would be amazing. But
Yeah, yeah,
it's not just, people kind of forget, like, what happens if they even play the entire playoffs in the NBA or even in Germany or Spain, and God forbid a scorekeeper gets sick and dies,
yeah.
or
Somebody
somebody
died.
brings
Yeah,
it back to their
Li-
family, and
that's liability.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it's too risky. In my mind, it's too
yeah.
risky.
All right, let's go to the next topic. I think a lot of guys are dying to hear. I know you talked about speaking to the GM of Fenerbahce in Turkey more recently. And for those of you who don't know who Fenerbahce is, a powerful EuroLeague team. I think they recently won EuroLeague a couple years back. Have a lot of top players, NBA former players. Really good organization as a whole. What are you hearing in terms of budget cuts for next year? Is there a percentage? Is there a number? And what do you think in terms of how that's going to affect the import slots for Americans? I know I talked about it last week, possibly it being a 25 to 40%, some teams 50% budget cuts would in turn would be technically one or two salary slots. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it's really hard to kind of generalize. I think first and foremost, like I mentioned before, if somebody's telling you um, exactly what's going to happen, or hey, here's the budgets for next year, or hey, here's what's going to happen, they're lying to you. They
Right.
are, because there are so many uncertainties and variables that affect this, that things can change drastically in 1 week, let alone it's just the beginning of May.
Right.
In regards to budget cuts, I mean, yes, if I had to generalize, um, I would say that at least between 30 to 50% of budgets next year are probably going to be cut. Now, that
Yeah.
can come in many different ways. That can come, in just strictly the salary amount, or that can come in trying to keep the salary as high as they can, the same amount to this year or higher, but cutting an import spot,
Yeah.
right? I think, again, it comes down to a couple of variables, right? There will be a cut, I think, in most places,
Yeah.
but it's too uncertain right now. But those variables are what country and what league, right?
Right.
How is their local economy? What are the international travel rules? How, and on top of that, the go back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? So the way that these teams get their revenue, the team sponsor. Who's the team
Right.
sponsor? What industry are they in?
Yeah. I talked
Tourism,
about that
travel,
last week.
airlines?
I talked
I
about last
mean,
week. I said if it's,
oh,
if
you
it's
did?
an
I mean,
airline carrier or if it's a restaurant, those team budgets might be in jeopardy.
those are going to be my two
And I
examples.
was,
Turkish Airlines.
yeah, exactly. Turkish Airlines.
You have Hungry Jacks. Hungry Jacks for NBL in Australia, they literally just re-upped their title sponsorship like 3 weeks before this happened.
Right.
Right. So if it's a restaurant, tourism, travel, financial services, like, is that sponsoring the team? Then
Right.
that's going to be a big impact. What if there's a single owner that has all those, kind of rely on him?
Yeah. Yeah.
That it could be a positive thing too.
Yeah. I think
So
the biggest
again,
thing, like you just said, and I mentioned it as well, is looking at the global situation of the economy of the country you're going to. Not just, oh, it's a good league, it's a great league, you guys level up from here. Look at the opportunity of the team that your agent is bringing to you. Look at that country's economics as a whole. Don't base everything off basketball. Don't base everything on where you can go, because you can't go anywhere if you don't get the opportunity, and you're gonna be pissed if you're not getting your salary.
Definitely. And then one thing that, I kind of thought of as we were talking is going back to the makeup of how teams make money and generate their revenue. No one has any idea about fans right now.
Yeah,
I mean, what if they start the season normal and no fans are allowed? I mean, some teams literally rely on 75% of their budget from ticket sales.
yeah, for sure.
So that budget can't be made yet until they know that.
Yeah.
So it's a what comes first, the chicken or the egg type thing, and it's just like there's so many uncertainties.
So with all these variables to consider, um, last week I brought up possibly, depending on where the team and the player meet in terms of playing time, what it was like in that city last year. Do you see a potential for a lot of players going back to the team that they were at last year for that comfort, for that familiarity, and just saying, you know what, I liked it here. They like me, and they know what they're getting. Let's just run it back for year two and have that a little bit of sense of security. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, I would definitely advise it. I think, on one end of the spectrum, a job is better than no job. So you can
Right.
either sit there and kind of wait and hope. And, I think we'll get into this a little after about, the shift and maybe even test the G League or the NBA. And that might not happen for a while. Or you can have a conversation now and take advantage of having that relationship with the team. If you did well, if you enjoyed it first and foremost, and you were happy there, and you're a professional basketball player getting paid, I mean, look at the situation we're in. You can kind of count your blessings when you have them, and
Right.
double down on familiarity. I think it's a win-win for the team and for the player. And you might be able to get things done earlier rather than later right now.
Right.
Um, but also, I think you never want to sell yourself short, of course. So everyone's case is different. You have to have a conversation with yourself, conversation with reality, a conversation with your agent. Did you have a killer season?
Yeah.
Were you getting? Was it a year where you had to prove yourself and you did, or was it a year where you did all right but you have some unfinished business?
Yeah.
Depending on that, why not go there and double down on what you did, right?
Do you think with what's going on, and let's say you do want to go back, is there potential room for getting a raise as well if you go back? Is that negotiable, do you think?
There are. Again, I think it's going to depend on the team and the budget, what they do with the import spots, how they shift the money. But in my mind, and I just got on the phone before this. I was on the phone with a GM from Italy, and I had this conversation with him because I wanted to hear his thoughts. And I think it's never a better time to have longer term contracts, right? Generally speaking, especially at the entry levels overseas, it's typically a 1 year contract.
Yeah.
Obviously there's 1+1s, and once you get up to the high level, it's 2 year, maybe even 2+1. But
Yeah.
most of the time, it's a 1 year contract. That's why there's so much high turnover, both with players and with staffs. Well,
Yeah.
it's a perfect time to extend that, right? So why not either double down on where you were and or extend it, or start a new contract of you know getting having more security. It's a win for
Yeah.
everyone. So also, to answer the ultimate question that you asked me is, can you get a raise? For sure, but you can also leverage that in order to negotiate a raise for the future and be more secure. What happens if you say, hey, look, I get the situation, but I'm willing to bet on myself for 2 or 3 years. I'll take a 30 or 40 or 50% cut this year as long as it's a 2 or 3 year deal.
Yeah.
Why can't you do that? And then you could bet on yourself that if you hit certain milestones, or you help the team be successful, you can then leverage that into that contract.
Right. And that was actually my next point. If that's an option, then possibly would you suggest guys look at a 2 year deal with a 1 year, and then the second year being a player option? Is that something that you think a lot of guys and gals, ladies, you're always included, I love you guys too, should look at in terms of that security layer? Because I think from a whole standpoint, globally, all economics involved and included in the decision making process, I don't think the market as a whole is going to stabilize for another year or two. So in that time, what do you do? Like, how do you make sure you're holding up that money? I think that is definitely a good approach to maybe look at it like, you know what? I'm going to bet on myself. Let's do a 2 year deal with raises for that next year, and hopefully an option. If not, that's something you and your agent talk about. But just to hold the firm down for you and your family and make sure you guys are taken care of, I think a 2 year option or a 2 year deal with a 1+1 option is definitely something that a lot of players should look at as well.
I would love nothing more. I mean, I've been saying it for a while. It is. I like to say it's kind of a kind of a broken system the way that it works, and the math works with the players and the years and the agent commissions and the teams. And one way to help combat that is a longer term deal, right? So everybody feels more stable, including the team. So I would say absolutely. Now the other reality is that I don't know if, like, everyone's in a perfect world, of course, but everyone's not going to be able to have that opportunity. Should you look for it? I think so. I mean, I don't see why you would rather have a 1 year deal. Like, this isn't, of course, there's levels to it, right? If you're that EuroLeague player or that
Right.
that almost EuroLeague player, you bet on yourself for 1 year and then double or triple your salary into the millions, sure,
Right.
right? But if you're not that, then why not have the security with the upside?
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a no brainer. But again, like, not everyone's going to have that opportunity, and some teams might not be that flexible. So you
Yeah.
might as well lead with it right now, and
Right.
find ways that you can differentiate yourself to lock down a deal early. Right. Everyone's
Okay.
situation is going to be different.
Last thing on the contract stuff, is there any things a player and their agent shouldn't do? Are there any demands or ways they
Ooh,
shouldn't approach a team in this contract negotiating period coming up?
definitely. I just think it's how you communicate. I mean, from my side, and I'm sure players saw it too, when this thing hit, people's and companies and organizations and clubs' true leadership kind of showed. It
Yeah.
was either positively or negatively. And some of that is going to lead to certain agents or players never dealing with these teams again, and vice
Right.
versa. I know that there were certain players that probably handled it maybe a little bit too aggressively, or jumped the gun a bit, but what not to do would be to demand too much.
Exactly.
You never want to sell yourself short, but right now is a time where, like, you need to come to that agreement and meet somewhere in the middle. And if it's a position that you're happy with, it's a respectable league. Don't, and I say this anyways, you never want to rely on the money and just put money first.
Right.
Obviously, there's certain circumstances where that would make sense, but right now, like, those other variables should have much more weight. Right?
Yeah.
Are you happy? Are you going to be able to develop there? Can you help them win? And if that's the case, the money part, that needs to meet in the middle, man. Because if you're too aggressive right now, as always, even more than now, I'm sorry, even more than before, there's someone coming for your spot. So someone will play for less, and someone
Right.
will snag that deal quicker than you.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. I definitely agree. For the rookies out there that are considering um, their options and their approach to the situation and being their first time overseas or G League, that's always a question I get. What's your thought process on that? Obviously, everything always is going to depend on the individual, where they play,
Yeah.
what their resume is, so forth, so on and so forth. How do you advise your guys on that topic when they come to you? Like, man, I'm trying to get to the G League no matter what it takes.
Yeah, it's a tough topic, because when you start to crunch the numbers, and we've talked about this, you just got to realize that how many spots are there in the G League, right? And then it's
Mhm.
not it's tough because it's not always about talent.
Yeah.
I mean, it never really always is about talent. Sorry, I got a call.
No, you good.
Um, you need for the G League, you need a lot of luck. You need to be in the right place at the right time. It's definitely, there's definitely politics involved. Not necessarily in a bad way, but you just got to think about that trickle down effect. And what if the assignment players come down to the G League, and you were supposed to play a role, and then you get caught on the end of the bench, and then you average 2 points a game, and then how does that hurt your career in the future?
Yeah.
It's definitely important to think about. Again, how difficult is it to make that? The reality of it is, a lot of guys think, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. Well, do you understand that giving it a shot means that you're going to have to pay your own way to those tryouts that are in September and October? And if you really, really, really get lucky to beat the guys they, recruited there, and then go to training camp, and then go down from 17 players at training camp to 10 on the final roster, people don't really, even just that, it's like, oh, so that's it? Yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So it's hard to make the G League. But again, at the same time, that was kind of generally. Now, it's going to be harder, in my opinion, because you're
Yeah.
going to see a shift, maybe. And I think we can talk about this, even more in depth. But you're going to see that shift of guys that were at that mid-level overseas that might say, okay, well, I was making, I don't know, 500,000 or 200,000. They're going to cut that in half. I might as well give it a shot now because right now I'm I'm sacrificing less. Like I'm risking less than normally for giving up overseas to try the G League,
Yeah,
depending on where they are in their career, or um, even getting those 2A and Exhibit 10s. Like now, those are going to be more competitive than ever.
yeah,
And
those is gonna be it's
I
gonna be
think
a dog
personally,
fight.
it's never a better spot for the NBA to say, let's go after some of these EuroLeague guys that we never could have gotten. Like, what if their budgets get cut? Like, now we can snag them and say, hey, look, you might have a chance to make this guaranteed deal that is a little bit less, but with the uncertainty, like we're the NBA. If anyone's going to survive, we are.
Yeah. No, I think those are great points. Like you said, the biggest thing that we don't realize coming out of college initially is those numbers involved, crunching those numbers. And what me and Kev are getting at is not to shoot down your dreams or not trying
Nope.
to destroy what you're trying to go after, your aspirations. You got to live your life the way you think it should be lived, and you should go after everything you deserve. However, it's a big market of players, a lot of talented players, and it's a savage league. Like you really have to have a different mindset and approach playing in the G League. I know myself, like you said, somebody can get called down. When I was in Idaho, Will Barton got called down from Portland, and Victor Claver and Joel Freeman and everybody that was starting. Their minutes got cut quickly, so your numbers drop, your stats drop, and now you look less attractive for overseas teams and summer league options. So these are all things you have to consider. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be a one shoe fits all solution. But it's something you and your agent have to talk about wholeheartedly with honest communication, open communication about what it is you're trying to do and where it is you're trying to be. With that being said, last question about.
Can I jump in for 1 second and
Yeah,
ask you one question? So I know you touched on it a little bit, but you were in that position. Like you had to make that decision. And
yeah.
obviously, some things have changed in salaries and different, different career paths. But when you were in that position, what was like the ultimate one or two factors for you that said, okay, like, because obviously in the position you were in, you had potential pass overseas, and you said, I'm going to double down on myself in the G League. Was it
Right.
just that, or like, what were the one or two variables for you that were like, hey, I'm going to choose this way?
For me, it was tough because I had a pretty solid resume. I was coming off the Pac-12 championship where I was MVP. I had a really great summer league with the Bobcats. I had a really good training camp with the Warriors in terms of being the last cut. So in my mind, I'm like, man, I'm only one step away. That's not everybody's biography. That's not everybody's story.
Hmm.
But for me, I felt I was close enough to say, let's give it a shot for this 1 year. And if it doesn't work, then I'll move on. So I ended up playing really well. Just happened to be on a losing team. I was all rookie third team, so I got the individual stuff. And when I got to our team in Idaho, when I played, we were 500. But it's hard for an agent to sell that when they see the Idaho Stampede at 15-38
Definitely.
record. It's hard to say, well, when my guy was there, they were 500. Nobody cares. So you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to sometimes step outside of your comfort zone and your box, and everybody constantly telling you how nice you are, how good you are, man, you should be in the NBA, yada yada yada, and focus on the principles and the facts at hand. If it were to happen, you would be there. So you got to keep working until then.
So it
And it's
sounds
a
like,
hard
I mean,
it's a hard pill to swallow. I think we're all confident in our beliefs. We all have a sense of pride and ego, whether we like to declare it or not. And sometimes it gets in the way. But
mhm.
I think the biggest thing beyond that is just really honing and perfecting your craft, staying in the gym, staying consistent to your approach, and continue to dominate every time you step on the floor. I think a lot of people get confused with, okay, well, I killed so and so last year. I killed this person last year. Why are they getting jobs and I'm not? You have to be consistent every day in your approach. So you got to treat your workouts the same as you treat pickup. You got to treat pickup the same as you treat practice. You got to treat practice the same way you treat the game. And that's
Man.
what separates the top pros versus everybody else.
Amen. And we could talk for hours about this, but I always say comparison is the thief of all joy. Like
Facts.
it is, because there are going to be dudes that you just waxed for 4 years in college and they got a job overseas, or maybe they even got lucky and got in a spot in the G League and killed,
Yeah.
right? Like that's going to happen. And maybe you're better than them, but that's their path. Maybe they got super lucky, or maybe you're not taking into consideration that they have a different citizenship, and they kind of got in the door that way, or whatever. Maybe they just their brothers, cousins, fathers,
Is the uncle
whatever
of the is
is
the
the
uncle of the Bucks or
of
the cousin of
or the
yeah.
main sponsor in Albania, like whatever. Like
Right.
you don't know, so double down on yourself and invest in yourself, and trust that your story is your story. Like there are going to be times when it's not fair, but that's life, right? So just take that into consideration when you think like, oh, I'm the best, I can make it to this team, or I can get through there. Well, real life means that there's other variables involved in that, and some of them
Right.
sometimes aren't fair.
Last question. Again, this is going for the rookies. Should they be fearful of going overseas their first year with everything going on? Or do you feel like it's going to be kind of a hidden opportunity for guys to take advantage and for ladies to take advantage? Because a lot of players are going to be fearful. I think as Americans, we tend to be like, man, I'm not going overseas. I don't know what the hell that is. It's everything is third world in your mind coming from America. You kind of have this bias, but in your mind, do you think there's going to be that two-way street, that two-way dichotomy of, okay, you're going to have half the players scared to go overseas because it's a Chinese disease and it's stemmed overseas, or do you think it's going to be like, okay, well, since everybody not going, I'm going to go and take advantage of this time?
Well, to start, if you have that mindset of like overseas is this third world, like I don't know if it's for me, I'm too good for it. Like I'm praying for you. Like you need to open up your mind. I've been to 34 countries, and I'm right now I'm enjoying the downtime of being home, but I miss traveling so much that like I
Yeah,
can't wait to get back there.
right, right,
And for me, like I will be there immediately when things pick back up. So with that being said, I think players should have that mindset too. Like, there's no reason why you should be scared. Will there be? Of course. I mean, obviously, I'm not just going to jump on a plane and go frantic around Europe. But like, once I know that things are a little bit more stable and leagues are taking proper precautions, um, I'm going to do my research and education and make sure things are set. But absolutely, like there are going to be people that are a little bit afraid, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like
right.
if you don't feel comfortable going overseas this year, maybe it is the year you double down and try and go take that risk in the G League. Maybe it is your year, which we didn't even talk about, but maybe we should, and some people listening should hear this. Is that maybe it's the year that like you're a rookie and maybe you would have went overseas, but like you're not going to be an NBA player, that you get that regular job.
Yeah,
If you're too humble to do that, then I can't help you, because that's reality.
yeah,
So I also think that at the end of the day, there will be, no matter what ends up happening, there will be people that want that job, right?
yeah,
So if it's offered and you decide that it's not for you,
yeah.
don't think like you're owed anything, because like no one owes you shit, to be honest. So,
Right,
someone will take that. Someone will take that opportunity. You just have to kind of do it properly, and surround yourself with the people that can help you with that decision, and not just jump to conclusions, yes or no.
yeah. No, I agree. Um, so we got through 30 minutes. Open up the last 15 minutes for questions before we get into that. Thanks again, Kev, for all your insight. It's
Of
been
course,
really
man.
good. I think the followers have definitely been appreciative of what we've been dropping in terms of information and knowledge, the gems as always. But I want to open up this last 15 minutes for questions. So let's start. The Great Miller, go ahead. You want to take that one, Kev?
Yeah, oh man. I think we've even talked about this in the past. Pro V Regional League of players. What advice do you have for them? Will they survive? Should you try to make a jump to a league now? I mean, look, I think it's it's one of those leagues that's one of those entry level leagues, right? So depending on the market, I don't know how many of those leagues will have, because right now they have obviously very few Americans allowed. I believe it's still one.
Right,
So will they survive? Will they still have the budget to pay for that visa and pay for that situation? I don't know. I think always, if you had a decent season there, you should always be looking to level up, right? So
right,
in terms of that advice, I mean, it's just normal advice. Like you should always be in constant communication with the team, with your agent, with the people around you, saying, hey, what's the future looking like? Did I do well there? Did I do good enough to come back and build on it? Is that something you're interested in, or should I look elsewhere? And again, right now, like your mindset should always be, hey, let me see all the options I have, because who knows what's going to happen.
right. I'm gonna take the next one. DeAndre Haskins. You asked advice for a 32-year-old who hasn't played. 3 years and wanted to get back into playing. I'm 30 myself. I had a severe injury when I was 26, and I was trying to come back for those 3 years in between 26 and turning 30. And I would say, I don't know what your specific scenario is, but it's tough. When you are removed from the game, people forget about you, out of sight, out of mind perspective. And if you don't have the consistent stats, you don't have the consistent film, it's going to be hard for teams to take a chance on you because they don't know what the problem was those 3 years you were out, whether it was injury, whether it was something you were dealing with mentally. It's going to be hard to define that for them. So my biggest advice is just to stay with it. If you really believe in yourself, you really want to keep trying, keep trying. I mean, you got one life to live, and you never know when it's going to be gone, especially with this shit going on now. Excuse my language. But you got to go all in on your dreams, man. That's the one thing you don't want to have is regret. So I would say, DeAndre, just keep going for it, man. I don't know exact what avenue, but just keep going for it.
I found another one, the next one. So what is the market for a first-year pro trying to play overseas? How hard is it going to be to find a place to play? I will take this one because I love this one. Look, the reality of it is that, if you're not on draft boards and you're not an NBA guy, the path is going to be tough. Too many guys today think that, going overseas is some walk in the park. And if I'm not going to the NBA, then I'll go to the G League. And if I'm not going to the G League, I'll go sip on some wine in Barcelona, eat paella, and play for $50K. Like, that is not the reality of it. So in terms of the market for a first-year pro, look, there are respected first divisions in this world that pay a little bit less than $1,000 a month. And there are guys that have had success there. Quick shout out to Austin Tillman. I know he's listening. He just got announced guard of the year in Portugal, and
my God,
but he's a great example. That's a league where the budgets aren't huge. He bet on himself. On top of his even better story, which I'll save for another time, of not having an opportunity that first year, but. Right. There are leagues that don't pay a lot of money that, and again, Portugal might not even be the best example because, who doesn't want to live in Portugal? But if you are not willing to, play for, I like to say, a toothbrush and a roof over your head, then you don't believe in yourself enough because it's not sexy. You might be going to some village in some random Eastern Bloc country and it's going to be freezing and they don't speak your language and you don't know how to order food and you got to find way to the facility. You get to the facility, then it's freezing cold in there and they don't have weight room. It's not like college here. If you're lucky, you might have access to a local community weight room where they don't speak your language again. So all these things, you're like, that doesn't sound fun. No, it's not. If you're going to be a pro and you want to go be a pro to, gram your first contract and take a selfie with, in City Center, I can't help you there,
So let me sum up what Kev is saying in the quickest and perfect way. Are you really about this life? Are you really ready to sacrifice?
Facts.
Are you all the way invested in this? Simple answer. Dej, how will this COVID stuff affect European imports? That's a good question. I don't want to sit here and act like I know everything, but just from thinking about it from a full perspective, I think European imports would be okay. However, I do think teams will double down on their domestic players and look to always take care of them first before they take care of the Americans, number one. And then the Europeans, number two. I think the money is going to hurt everybody, honestly. But I think the European imports should be okay. What do you think, Kev?
I'm sorry, I was reading another question. Sorry, repeat that one more time.
Do you think European imports are going to be affected by this?
I don't think as drastically. They don't represent, obviously there's not as many rules for that. So, there's only a certain amount of American imports allowed on every roster. And as a European guy or a Bosman A or B, depending on the situation, I don't think it will be as affected as much, especially because the salaries won't be affected as much since, well, I guess depending on where, but, typically speaking, those import spots are kind of designated at first for those Americans, but obviously, don't take that out of context because depending on the country. But to answer your question, I don't think they'll be affected as much.
I'm gonna take another one real quick because it's gonna be a quick one. My guy Kyle, the budget cuts prediction, it could be anywhere from 25 to 40%. So if the team has a $1 million budget, you're talking about $250,000 and 25% being gone. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. So it could be pretty heavy. But again, they could look to cut a whole import slot, like Kev said, to maintain a certain high level price point for their star guys they want to select for their team. and they could give you that money still, but you might have to do more work because you have one less American that you can rely on and depend on to help you win games.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like I don't want, some of the stuff we're saying is being said because it's stuff that you need to hear, not because it's stuff that you want to hear, right? But despite all the negativity, positivity is contagious as well. So I mean, look, it's been what, 7 weeks? So maybe in another 7 weeks, there's some crazy miraculous vaccine and things get back to normal and the market's back to reality. I mean,
Right.
is it realistic? I don't know, but I hope it happens. But again, just in terms of the budgets, real quick, if you weren't listening before, like there could be teams that have an owner that has a company that's just doing well and they're saying, hey, look, our budget's increasing, so it could stay the same. And there are teams that are trying to take advantage of that.
Right.
There will be opportunities for even greater contracts. Maybe they put more of their budgets into the import spots and say, look, we'll try and get the best imports we can. And then, maybe if we have to sacrifice, some local import or some local players or even use some younger kids, maybe
Yeah.
that's the way they do it. So there are opportunities that maybe the budgets don't get cut. It's just,
Yeah.
there's so many variables that we talked about before that it's hard to tell, but you'd rather be pleasantly surprised than disappointed saying, oh, the salaries are going to be the same.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Take the next one, Kev.
Cool. Let's see. My man Drew, for rookies, I've heard that this might not affect them as much because their salaries aren't very high anyways. Could this be a positive time for rookies? Definitely. I would say yes and no. I would say it depends on that shift, right? So, that shift of guys, like let's just say, generally speaking, budgets get cut 30%, right? And the guys that were making, I don't know, $50,000, right, are now making 35 or are now making 30. And those jobs might be taken from the guy, like those usual typical entry level jobs may be taken by the guys that are saying, I'd rather play for less and have a job than go back home and not play for anything at all. So maybe those rookie spots aren't there as much. So there's a reality that there could be many less job opportunities for rookies than there were in the past. Now, on the opposite side of that, as positive as I like to stay, that could mean the opposite, right? That could mean that, there are higher level teams that say, hey, we might not have as big of a budget, but we're just going to take a rookie. We're going to take a rookie because we believe in this rookie and that they can help us. And we don't, we're not going to convince a guy that's been playing for 3 or 4 years that has a certain market value to come for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, whatever it may be. Right. Yeah. So what do you think?
Either way, I think it could be a good thing where, like you said, the teams will pretty much cut out their heavy imports they were paying them and just say, forget it, we can go all on the rookie and give them crumbs. Crumbs meaning 20 to 40,000 for a year, which you could get working at UPS or FedEx. No disrespect to people that do that. I'm just giving you a similarity of salary compensation. But on the other end, rookies in this situation, I think, will be affected by the resume. And what I'm saying is that when you're a rookie, it's like being a freshman in college all over again. You're starting all over again. Nobody really knows you. Nobody knows that they can trust you, what you're really good at, what your specialty is. So a lot of teams are going to shy away, I think, and really go with the proven commodity, the proven product, and that being veterans. So I'm not saying it's going to be possible for rookies, but you are looking at somewhat of an uphill battle because historically teams select guys that are proven. Next question, I got to give my girl Trisha.
Go ahead.
Have we heard anything about the Turkish Federation about canceling the season? You heard it was postponed. I haven't heard anything from Turkey personally. They kind of move their own accord, like similar to Russia. They do whatever the hell they want to do when they want to do it. So your guess is as good as ours. Kev, you got anything on Turkey?
No comment. That's it. You said it perfectly, man. I did find another good one. Kevin, when you talked about players should think about demanding less in the next season, do you think it can also be a point for agents to cut their provision on signing players? Can it? Yes, it definitely can. I mean, I think on one hand,
real quick.
Yeah.
Do you know who asked that question?
Pro Sports Services.
All right, that's my guy Daniel. He was with me at Bamberg, and nice. He has some really good insight on the German markets. So next time you're in Germany, might be somebody you want to connect with. But anyway, answer his question.
I appreciate that. Perfect. We'll have to connect after this. Look, I think on one hand, yes, certain agents, and it even went through my mind, like I want to make sure that first and foremost, it's not transactional for me. So like I want to make sure my current guys are good as much as I possibly can. And then of course I want to help grow, continue to grow the business and help, new players and add to my client roster. But if I know that there's a certain demand for a certain level overseas, or there might not be as many jobs, then yeah, it will affect the amount of players that I can sign. And that agents can sign for sure. I've seen, at least I've heard, other agents that were at least hesitant and wanting to figure out the details of how this is going to be, affect the full market before signing, a bunch of players. And then at the same time, it's an opportunity for agents that maybe didn't have a chance before to just snatch up a bunch of guys and sign them, because players are getting anxious, rightfully so, and then it doesn't end up working out. So I think there's a chance for it. And there will probably be a lot of rookies and or players that might have been signed with an agent in previous years that might be kind of waiting. And my follow-up to that is be patient. Like, right this second, if you're a rookie, unless you're on those draft boards, like we said, like no one's going to be able to do anything for you right now, right? Seasons aren't even officially canceled overseas yet, let alone signing players unless you're a certain level.
My guy, Cash_Chris10, the D3 guy, you've been blowing up this chat the whole time.
I was going to go with that.
We're not going to leave you hanging, so check it. You want to make history in 2023, you're going to do something nobody's ever seen or done before. You're going to have to be going out there doing double between the legs. You're going to have to be averaging 50. You're going to have to be dunking on people. You're going to have to win the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Conference Player of the Year. You're going to have to win a national championship. You're going to do so much stuff, I can't even describe it. It's going to be like MJ's 1988, 87 year. Go look it up for you young kids if you don't know what he did. That's all I can tell you, bro. I'm not trying to shoot your dreams down, but you got a lot of work in front of you. All right, Kev. Guys want to know about the summer pro exposure camps and how to get pretty much seen by agents. What's your advice on that? I know my guy Vic Lewis and a couple other guys are asking about that, being noticed by agents, how to go about that process, how to get more marketable, and then are they going to have the opportunity to showcase in front of people?
I'm just dying with some of his comments. Yo, shout out to my D3 guy, man. Hey, again, it's real. Not to get off topic, it's real. Like that's what you needed to hear. Like no one knows you anything. If you're good enough, they'll find you. If you're good enough, they'll find you, man. I don't care if you're, again, if your coach can get you a tryout with, with the Warriors, cool. Like they don't care. So you go out and ball and show that you're the best, and they'll find you. All right. So the question about exposure camps. So yeah, I exposure camps for me are definitely. I have mixed feelings on them. I think it's super, super important. That you educate yourself on exposure camps when you are going to go to them. I like to talk in spectrums and on both sides. So on one hand, you can either sit on the couch and pray that you're going to get a call and get a job. But if no one's calling you, the market doesn't lie. There's a reason. Maybe you're not good at basketball, or maybe that you got to prove it, right? So you can either sit on the couch and hope and pray, or you can invest in yourself, pay a couple $100, get your ass out to Vegas or wherever the exposure camp is and kill dudes. So that's the reality of it. Now, with that being said, there are a ton of exposure camps, and it's not like everyone's a bad guy trying to steal money, but like the reality is, like, you should be asking, okay, well, how many players went to your exposure camp last year that signed a contract that day? Or, and which is not going to be a lot. How many players went to your camp and got a chance to at least get introduced to or play for a coach that has a decision-making authority overseas? That's important as well, right? If you see a flyer or you get something to your inbox saying, come to my exposure camp in wherever in February because there's FIBA scouts coming and GMs are coming to sign you. First of all, I want to reiterate, FIBA scout is a made up term. There's no such thing. Teams have scouts, right? But if teams have the budgets to send scouts to the States, they're going to Vegas. They're going to NBA Summer League to try and find guys. Are they going to go to exposure camps? Absolutely, which is why some of the exposure camps in Vegas are great because they kind of walk through. But the reality is that they're not necessarily coming there to sign you. You have to have the mindset to invest in yourself. And if you have the mindset of saying, I'm going to pay $300 because this is going to get me a contract overseas, you're going to have a bad time. All right. Like if you think about doing that and saying, hey, I can meet someone, I can build a relationship, I can learn, and I do have the chance of balling out. And if I'm the best guy there, maybe somebody can introduce me to someone else. That's going to be great. Right. And then the other thing is back to before, like the exposure camps in February, GM's coming. Stop for a second. The season's going on. Why would it? The GM and the coach from Germany is not leaving their game in their season to come sign a guy. I mean, so these things are important.
The biggest thing I tell guys repeatedly is that, like you just said, you have to be willing to invest in yourself, and you have to be willing, like I said earlier, with the last question you had about really sacrificing and really believing in your dream. It's easy to just sit up there and say, "Oh, I could bust so and so's, ass. I could kill them. I'd be cooking at LA Fitness. I'd be cooking at 24 in Lifetime." It's a different feel when you're between those lines with reps and fans, and you really got to provide for your family. That's when you see the real savage. You see the real animal in these players, both on the female and the male side. But beyond that, you have to try. Like, I don't think people understand the very simple, powerful tool that is. A lot of people are always talking, not enough action. So yes, pay for your flight, pay for your hotel, pay for your food, pay for all of that, and then go in there with the mindset that, man, you can't go in there with the mindset that this is some BS and everything's going to be a money grab. Because if you do that, you're already going to defeat yourself before you even step foot on the floor. You're already going to be feeling sorry for yourself. There's D1 guys that are there. Shit, Mike James has been an exposure.
Yep.
You don't know who Mike James is, go do your research. So there's opportunity there for those who seek it and wish to be that. But you have to have your mind in the right place before you can even approach that. Because yes, every guy is not a great guy. Every guy is looking for an advantage and opportunity, and it could be you. But if you don't have any eyes on you coming from a D2, if you don't have any eyes on you coming from a D3, nobody's watching your synergy. Nobody's looking at your stats. That's just the way this world and this business of basketball overseas works. You got to show and prove. You got to go to the places where people can actually visually see you, and then let them make a decision from there. But like you said, you got to go in there and kill. It ain't going to be no walk in the park.
Huge, man. I got to continue on that thought. And, it comes down to what are you willing to sacrifice to get where you want to be, right? So I had a conversation with a guy the other day who was introduced to me, and it was like textbook answers. It was perfect for me. It kind of teed it up for me to hit a grand slam. But he said, I don't know if the exposure camp or even going overseas is for me. Like, only a couple $100 a month, and I can go get a 9-to-5 job. And I said, yeah, you can. That is the decision you have to make. Like, do you want to go to get a 9-to-5 job, or do you want to invest in yourself? Because don't forget, at the end of the day, that pain of regret is going to kill you. So those jobs will always be there. So as much as we're trying to be real with you and say it's a difficult path and you might not make it, if you love the game, who the hell am I to tell you not to give it a shot?
Right.
Go do it. Because if you look back in 1, 2, 4, 8, 15 years and say, I wish I bought a $250 flight to Barcelona and went to that training academy and tried out, and I wish I gave it a shot, and you didn't, that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life, and that's going to hurt.
Like we said earlier, we don't have all the answers. As Kanye said, we ain't got all the answers, Sway. We just try to speak from our heart, our mind, our experience, our passion to help people and be honest, because there's a lot of people that want to play this game for a living, but they don't want to put the work in. They don't want to put the sacrifice in. So we're gonna answer 3 more. The timers went up. Let's answer 3 to 4 more, and then let's call it a wrap.
Cool. Let's see.
I want to ask Stacey. Stacey had one earlier. He said, I think guys are going to start signing these deals normally because it's in July and late June. You think that's going to get pushed back?
It could. I mean, again, like I said from the beginning, there are some teams and areas and markets overseas that are like trying to figure it out now. I mean, look, if their season's officially over and they're sitting at home, they're going to be watching film and trying to figure out that next year's roster. Like, that's a reality. So if they can take a chance in signing some guys, which they already have, a few different teams, I mean, it's May. It's strange. But at the same time, for the majority of things, it is that trickle down. So, for your rookies and for your first couple of year guys, that is usually July and August, even September. So now, if seasons get pushed back, it could be October. Yeah. Right? It really could be. So it's hard to tell. But again, that just goes back to a whole nother topic of having the mindset of like, control what you can control. If it happens tomorrow, great. If it happens in November, great. Take advantage of your time now. You don't got to be doing ball handling drills for 18 hours a day, right?
Yeah. Hey, Milo, I only got a minute and change before it cuts me off. So you wanted to ask Kev what you think about overseas agents looking at players. I'm going to have an overseas agent on the next one, hopefully this week, so he can answer that. And then for all the guys, the D2 NAIA guys that were wondering about showcases and pro combine events, I'm gonna have the guy from Eurobasket on here, I think next week as well. So not trying to cut you guys off or leave you dry, but the clock is running. Is there any other one you see, Kev, that you want to get before we conclude this thing?
There were some, but look, if I didn't get to any, or if you think I can answer a question, just shoot me a DM or email me. All my stuff's. I mean, I'm happy to try and answer as much as I can. I know I get, not to sound too cool for for myself, but I get a ton of DMs. I try to answer everyone, but if I don't answer, just my email's on there as well, right? So don't take it personal. Shoot me a DM. If I can answer it, I'll answer it. If not, then I'll hit me with an email and. Yeah, man. But again, I think this was awesome. I think we might have to do this again because it's a lot of stuff that people need to hear, man.
I appreciate you. The clock is running out. Joe Coop was good. Trisha, I appreciate you being on here. Thank you guys all. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Appreciate you, Kev.
All right, man. Talk